The chandeliers blazed like captured stars above the grand ballroom of Seattle's Whitmore Hotel. Velvet curtains framed the stage, crystal glasses chimed, and the hum of wealth and power vibrated through every corner. It was the kind of night where fortunes and reputations were polished with a smile, where people came less for charity and more for the theater of being seen. And yet, in the middle of this glittering sea of gowns and tuxedos, a girl sat alone. 16-year-old Sophia Kane. Her midnight blue dress shimmered under the lights, diamonds glinted on her ears, but her shoulders were tense, her hands fidgeting with the hem of her skirt. Around her conversation swirled laughter, gossip, deals whispered over champagne, but none of it reached her. For Sophia, the world had gone silent years ago. She had trained herself to read lips, to study faces like a second language, but tonight she was tired of pretending. Tired of nodding politely at people who didn't really see her. Tired of being paraded as the daughter of Rebecca Kane, CEO of Kane Global, one of the most powerful women in Seattle. Sophia wasn't invited to speak. She was here to stand still, smile on cue, and remind everyone that Rebecca Kane's life was picture perfect. Except it wasn't. From across the ballroom, Rebecca's figure radiated control. Tall, elegant, dark hair swept into a flawless chignon, her gown black as obsidian, her posture sharp as a blade. People orbited her the way planets circle the sun. Investors leaned in eagerly, journalists, scribbled rivals, tried to match her cool smile. She was a woman, carved from stone, unshakable. But she never once looked at the girl sitting alone. Sophia lowered her gaze. Invisible. Always invisible. At the far edge of the ballroom, a man in a simple black vest was pushing a cart stacked with glassware. He didn't belong to this world of diamonds and pedigrees. His shoulders were broad from years of labor, his movements careful but efficient, the kind of presence most people dismissed without a thought. Daniel Brooks. He had taken this extra shift because rent was due, and his daughter Emily needed braces. By day, he scrubbed floors at a downtown office tower. Tonight, he polished glasses and cleared plates while billionaires toasted themselves. And that's when he saw her. Sophia wasn't hard to spot once you looked past the spectacle. The way she sat stiffly in the corner, the way her eyes darted around the room but never rested, the way her lips pressed tight as though holding back a scream. Daniel knew that look. He had seen it on his own daughter's face, the ache of being left out, of being surrounded by people but completely alone. He was about to move on when a group of teenagers drifted toward Sophia's table. Sons and daughters of the elite dressed like miniatures of their parents, their laughter edged with cruelty. "Can you even hear us?" One boy mouthed exaggeratedly, hands flapping near his ears. Another girl mimicked sign language nonsense motions that made her friends snicker. Sophia froze. She'd dealt with it before, but the sting never dulled. Daniel's chest tightened. He set his card aside and walked over, his pulse steady. The teenagers barely noticed him until his shadow fell across the table. "That's enough," he said firmly. The boy smirked. "Relax, we're just joking." Daniel didn't raise his voice, but his eyes held the kind of warning that only a man who had fought for respect his entire life could carry. Jokes don't make someone smaller, they make you smaller. The teens shifted uneasily. One rolled his eyes, but they drifted away, muttering. Sophia blinked, startled by the interruption. Her gaze lifted to Daniel's, wary at first. Then he raised his hands and signed two simple words. "You're okay." Her lips parted. She hadn't expected that. Not here, not from him. The corners of her mouth curved upward, just slightly. For the first time all night, she smiled. Daniel felt something twist in his chest. A fragile connection, like striking a match in the dark. He gave her a small nod and stepped back, returning to his cart. Across the ballroom, Rebecca had seen everything. Her eyes narrowed. Who was this man? And why was her daughter smiling at him when she never smiled at her? The music swelled, cameras flashed, and the MC called the crowd's attention to the stage where Rebecca was about to give her keynote speech. She moved forward, flawless as always, but her gaze flickered once more to the corner where her daughter, The girl she could never reach had just been reached by a janitor. The irony cut sharper than any blade. Outside the ballroom windows, the city glittered beneath the night sky, but inside another kind of storm had begun. Rebecca Kane would not say it aloud, but something about that fleeting smile born not of wealth, not of prestige, but of being seen, would haunt her long after the applause ended. And for Daniel Brooks, who thought this was just another shift, nothing more than a paycheck, the moment would set into motion a story he never imagined, one that would bind his life to the billionaire and her daughter in ways none of them could yet understand. Because sometimes the most powerful echoes begin in silence. The limousine door closed with a muted thud, sealing off the noise of the gala. Inside, silence hung heavier than the velvet drapes. Rebecca Kane sat perfectly poised, her back straight. Her chin lifted, her designer gown still immaculate as though untouched by the long evening. To anyone watching from outside, she looked like control itself. But across from her, Sophia sat curled against the window, staring out at the blur of city lights. Her hands rested limply in her lap. She didn't bother pretending to lip-read her mother anymore. She didn't bother pretending at all. Rebecca tried. It was an important night, Sophia. Her words were crisp, measured. She exaggerated the shape of them the way she always did when she thought her daughter might be watching. Sophia didn't look at her. Instead, her hands moved in sharp, clean gestures. You never try. The interpreter seated up front turned, slightly translating softly into words that Rebecca could hear. But Rebecca didn't need translation. She had seen enough ASL over the years to recognize those 3 words. They cut through her like glass. Rebecca's throat tightened. For a second, the iron facade cracked, and she almost reached for her daughter's hand. Almost. But the wall rose again, built from years of guilt, of distance, of never knowing what to say. Sophia didn't wait. She turned her face back to the city and let the silence answer for her. That night, as the limousine climbed into the hills where the Kane estate sat like a fortress, memories Rebecca had fought to bury pressed against her. The screech of tires on wet asphalt, the blinding flash of headlights from the opposite lane, the sound of shattering glass, her husband's final breath, and the silence that followed. When she woke in the hospital, her daughter had survived but deaf. The doctors said the damage was permanent. Rebecca remembered Sophia's small hands signing in frustration the way she had begged her mother to learn alongside her. But Rebecca had drowned instead in work and power, in anything that kept her from the truth she had been the one behind the wheel. Rebecca shut her eyes as the limousine turned into the long, winding drive. Outside, floodlights illuminated the sprawling house, but to her it looked more like a mausoleum. Across the city, in a modest apartment above a laundromat, Daniel Brooks unlocked his front door with a weary sigh. The hour was late, but a warm glow spilled from the living room. Daddy Emily's small voice rang out as she barreled toward him, her ponytail bouncing. 8 years old, all freckles and energy, she wrapped her arms around his waist before he could even set down his keys. Daniel chuckled, the exhaustion in his shoulders easing as he hugged her back. You should be in bed, kiddo. I waited. Her eyes, so much like her late mother's, sparkled. Did you bring me anything? Daniel pulled a wrapped dinner roll from his pocket, the only thing he could sneak away from the gala. Emily took it like it was treasure beaming. He watched her devour it at the tiny kitchen table, and for a moment the loneliness of his shift faded. This was why he worked, why he scrubbed floors and cleared glasses in rooms where men wore watches worth more than his yearly rent. Emily, his reason. As she finished her snack, she chattered about her day at school, her drawings taped to the refrigerator behind her. Daniel listened, every word soaking into him like sunlight. He thought of the girl at the gala, the Kane girl. Sophia, her eyes hollow until the moment he signed to her. It struck him how 2 children, both artists in their own way, could live such different lives. One surrounded by luxury, yet starved of connection. The other with little more than love and laughter, but rich in spirit. Daniel tucked Emily into bed, smoothing the blanket over her small frame. She drifted off, quickly clutching a stuffed rabbit with one ear missing. Daniel stood for a long moment, watching her breathe, and whispered, I'll keep fighting for you, kiddo. At the Kane estate, Sophia retreated to her room, closing the door softly but firmly. Rebecca lingered in the hallway, her hand hovering over the handle, aching to go in. But what would she say? Instead, she let her feet carry her to the study. The walls were lined with books she rarely read, awards and plaques that testified to victories that suddenly felt hollow. She poured herself a glass of scotch, the amber liquid trembling in the crystal. She sank into the leather chair behind her desk. The silence pressed in, heavy and suffocating. Rebecca thought of the janitor, the man who had stepped between Sophia and those cruel children. She remembered the way Sophia's face lit when he signed those 2 small words. "You're okay." Why hadn't she ever been able to make her daughter smile like that? The thought festered sharp and merciless. Sophia, in her room, sat at her easel. She picked up a brush and dragged black paint across the canvas. Thick, chaotic strokes. A figure half formed a shadow with its back turned. She painted until her hands trembled, until tears blurred her vision, until the silence in her chest felt like it might break her open. When she finally dropped the brush, she stared at what she'd created. The title came, Unbidden, Mother's Silence. Meanwhile, Daniel sat at his kitchen table with a worn notebook balancing bills. The numbers didn't add up, not really, but he would make them work. He always did. He thought again of Sophia's shy smile, the way her eyes had softened. Something about it stayed with him. Not because she was the daughter of Rebecca Kane, CEO, billionaire, untouchable, but because for a moment she had looked like a lonely kid who just wanted to be seen. And Daniel knew exactly what that felt like. By midnight, Rebecca still hadn't moved from her study. The Scotch glass sat empty. The shadows stretched long across the floor. For the first time in years, she whispered into the dark, her voice raw. "I don't know how to fix this." But the silence offered no answers. Across town, Emily stirred in her sleep and mumbled, "Daddy." Daniel, half dozing in the chair by her bed, reached out and smoothed her hair. "You're okay," he murmured. The same words he'd signed to Sophia. Words that meant more than either Rebecca or Sophia yet understood. Because sometimes the simplest promises carry the weight of everything we need. And as dawn crept slowly toward the city, 2 very different families lay in the quiet, unaware that their lives were about to intertwine in ways none of them could imagine. The gray clouds of a Seattle morning stretched low across the sky, pressing against the glass walls of Westridge Academy. The private school campus gleamed with manicured lawns and pristine buildings, an oasis of privilege. Yet, behind one corner of the art wing, life was about to braid 2 unlikely stories together. Sophia Kane sat at her easel, her brush tapping absent-mindedly against the rim of a jar of water. Around her, other students worked in hushed focus, but she remained caught between strokes, unable to finish what she had begun. The canvas before her showed bold swathes of color, anger, sadness, longing, all colliding in ways she hadn't yet mastered. Her teacher had stepped out, leaving the students to work on their own. Sophia sighed, her eyes drifting to the window. She hadn't slept well since the gala. The image of her mother, stone-faced and unreachable, clashed against the memory of the janitor, what was his name, who had signed those simple words. "You're okay." 2 words that had somehow meant more than every speech her mother had ever given. A sudden burst of laughter pulled her from her thoughts. She turned startled to see a smaller figure darting into the room, an 8-year-old girl with freckles and messy hair. Emily. Sophia blinked. She recognized her from the gala, the little girl who had clung to the janitor when he'd arrived to collect glasses. What was she doing here? Emily bounced forward, clutching a sketchbook almost as big as her torso. She didn't seem to care that she was crashing a high school art studio. She plopped the sketchbook onto a stool beside Sophia and grinned. Without hesitation, Emily flipped the pages, showing bright, childlike drawings of houses, animals, and stars. She pointed proudly at a messy crayon rainbow. Sophia tilted her head, lips twitching into a smile she hadn't planned. Emily's energy was contagious. Then Emily did something that made Sophia's heart jolt. She signed a single, clumsy word. "Friend." It wasn't perfect, the angles all wrong, but it was intentional. Someone had taught this little girl the basics. Sophia's chest tightened. She signed back, slowly, yes. Friend. Emily's grin grew wider. She clapped her hands and then scrambled onto the stool beside her, pulling out markers and beginning to doodle right on her sketchbook. The door opened. Daniel Brooks stepped in holding a mop and bucket. He stopped short when he saw his daughter perched beside Sophia Kane, the CEO's daughter, drawing as if the two had known each other forever. "Emily," he said gently, "you're not supposed to be in here." Emily pouted. "But she's my friend." Daniel's eyes flicked to Sophia. She was watching him with quiet curiosity, her hands resting lightly in her lap. He swallowed, nervous. This was dangerous ground. The Kane family lived in a world so far from his that even being noticed by them could cost him his job. Still, he raised his hands and signed slowly but clearly. "Is she bothering you?" Sophia's lips curved again. She shook her head, then signed back. "No. She's sweet." Daniel exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. He offered Sophia a tentative smile, one that softened the worn edges of his face. "She's a handful," he said aloud, knowing she wouldn't hear the words but somehow needing to say them anyway. Sophia didn't need the sound. She read his expression, the warmth in his eyes, and for a moment felt something she hadn't felt in years, safe. That afternoon, when Rebecca arrived to collect her daughter, she found Sophia waiting near the school steps. For once, Sophia wasn't brooding or distant, there was a brightness in her eyes. Rebecca narrowed her gaze following the direction of her daughter's glance. There he was again, the janitor from the gala. He was walking beside his little girl carrying her backpack, the mop handle sticking awkwardly from the cart he pushed. And Sophia. Sophia was smiling at them. Rebecca's stomach tightened. On the drive home, she tried to ask what had happened. "You seemed different today," she said carefully. "Did something good happen at school?" Sophia turned her face toward the window. Her hands moved slowly. "You wouldn't understand?" Rebecca gripped the steering wheel harder. "Try me," she said. But Sophia didn't respond. The distance yawned wider, an invisible canyon between them. The next day, Daniel was polishing the floor in the main hall when he heard footsteps. He looked up to see Sophia approaching. His first instinct was to step aside to keep invisible as he had been trained to do. But she stopped right in front of him. Her hands moved quickly. "Thank you for the other night." Daniel blinked, surprised. Then he signed back, careful not to make mistakes. "You're welcome." Her gaze softened, and before he could say anything more, Emily came running down the hall waving a crumpled drawing she had made for Sophia. The three of them stood together, an unlikely trio in the middle of the marble corridor, while the rest of the world swept past without a glance. Rebecca arrived just in time to see it, her daughter smiling with the janitor and his little girl. Something twisted inside her chest, jealousy, anger, and a fear she could not yet name. That night, as Sophia sketched in her room, Rebecca stood outside the door again, listening to the soft scratch of pencil against paper. She ached to step inside to say something that mattered, but every time she tried the words lodged in her throat. The image of Daniel Brooks flashed in her mind, the way her daughter had looked at him, the way she had signed with ease. Rebecca pressed her forehead against the doorframe. How could it be that a janitor, a man she didn't know, had found a way to reach her daughter when she herself could not? At his own apartment, Daniel tucked Emily into bed again. She wriggled under the covers, whispering, "Sophia's nice." "She's sad, but nice." Daniel smoothed her hair. "Yeah," he murmured. "She is." Then, sitting alone in the quiet, he wondered what strange twist of fate had brought their lives together. He didn't know where it was heading. He only knew that when he'd seen that girl smile, something inside him had shifted. For years he had told himself his world and theirs would never overlap. But maybe, just maybe, he was wrong. Kane Global's boardroom sat on the 49th floor like a glass pulse, all skyline and hard edges. The table was long, the chairs were quiet, and the faces around Rebecca Kane watched her with the kind of careful interest reserved for storms and miracles. She didn't sit so much as take possession of her seat chin, high shoulders, relaxed eyes, alert. The city glimmered behind her like a backdrop to competence. "Let's get to it," said Victor Halloway, a hawk in a pinstripe suit. He was old Seattle money with a smile that never warmed. Q2 guidance is strong. The street likes certainty. What it does not like— He let the sentence dangle as he slid a glossy printout across the table, a photo from the gala, Rebecca immaculate. Her daughter alone in a corner, eyes elsewhere. Is distraction. Victor finished. Optics matter. Your house is your headline. Across from him, CMO Lila Chen shifted in her chair. The donors loved the speech, Rebecca, but there were whispers. People noticed Sophia wasn't engaged. A few asked if the Foundation's commitments to inclusion are, how do I put this, lived at home? A beat of silence. The air thinned. Rebecca did not flinch. Our numbers are clean. Our pipeline is healthy. If shareholders are investing in optics, they should buy fashion, not infrastructure. Victor steepled his fingers. Share price doesn't love surprises, Rebecca. It loves predictability. Rumor has a way of turning private matters into public risk. Then we manage risk, she said evenly. We set the story instead of chasing it. Sometimes Victor replied, mild as a knife. The story begins at your kitchen table. Something small and hot flared behind Rebecca's ribs. She saw the photo again, Sophia like a forgotten star in a midnight dress, and felt the room tilt by one unkind degree. Lila cut in softer. No one is questioning your leadership. We're asking how to protect it. I don't need protection, Rebecca said, steady as a metronome. I need performance. The meeting rolled on supply chains licensing a new federal compliance note, yet the words blurred into a hum. When it finally adjourned, Rebecca gathered her files with surgical precision. No one saw the slight tremor in her left hand. In the elevator alone, the walls turned into mirrors. Power had its own gravity. It held you upright even when your bones wanted to fold. At the lobby, a security guard wished her a good afternoon. She nodded and drifted toward the underground garage heels, clicking a metered count. The concrete air was cool. Somewhere, a radio faintly played an old Springsteen song. Rebecca reached her car, pressed the fob, and watched the headlights blink awake. She leaned against the door, closed her eyes, and exhaled a breath she didn't know she'd been holding all day. She took a small silver flask from her bag. It had been a gift in another lifetime, back when anniversaries had dates and laughter had sound. She turned it in her hand, the metal cold against her palm. The line between numb and functioning was thinner than people like to admit. A footfall echoed. She looked up. Daniel Brooks stood a respectful distance away in his navy workshirt sleeves, clean but frayed. He held a coil of orange extension cord and the kind of tired that doesn't ask for sympathy. He didn't stare at the flask. He didn't look away either. "Miss Kane," he said, voice low, careful in the echoing cavern. "There's a water station by the service elevator. Cooler's fresh." She studied him for a beat too long. "Are you following me, Mr. Brooks?" "No, ma'am. I'm working the south side of the garage. I saw you lean on the door." He didn't move closer. He didn't rescue. He simply stood, one human being offering a soft exit. Rebecca glanced at the flask again, then screwed the cap on and slipped it back into her bag. "You're very observant, Mr. Brooks. Janitors learn the building like a heartbeat," he said. "We hear what most people don't." Something in the way he said it, without irony, without angle, loosened a thread. Her voice came out before she had time to sand it smooth. "Do you have any idea what it's like to have them question if you can lead a company because you can't reach your own child?" He took a breath. "I don't know what it's like to be you." Then softer. "I do know what it's like to lose the person you love and still pack a lunch and show up anyway." The words settled between them heavier than the concrete columns. Rebecca's fingers tightened around her keys. "What do you know about loss?" Her tone sharpened the blade of habit. She regretted it as soon as it left her mouth. Daniel didn't flinch. My wife's name was Anna, he said. She had a laugh that made you think there were brighter bulbs in the world than you'd noticed. Chemo took the laugh before it took the hair. When it was over, I had a daughter who still needed pancakes on Saturday, and monsters checked under her bed on Sunday. That's what I know. He paused. That, and how to keep a floor so clean you can see your reflection when you're ready to. Silence again. Not empty, not tonight, but full. Rebecca swallowed. The board thinks my house is my headline. Maybe Daniel said. Or maybe your house is your harbor if you build it. She let out a small, humorless breath. Harbors are for ships that know how to dock. He nodded toward the elevator. Even ships learn. They bump a few pylons before they figure the angle. Against her will, the corner of her mouth betrayed her, the smallest near smile. She looked away quickly as if eye contact might tip her into something she couldn't control. You stepped in at the gala, she said, tone steadier. With those kids. With Sophia. They were cruel, he said simply. Cruelty is lazy. It uses cheap words to buy expensive pain. Rebecca felt a pressure behind her eyes she did not permit in public. She smiled, she said, barely audible. He nodded. Kids smile when they're seen. She tightened her grip on the keys. I have been seeing her with every resource, every professional, She stopped. Every expert except you, he finished, but not unkindly. She let the words sit. Far away, the radio changed songs. Somewhere above them, a truck rumbled across a seam in the street. Rebecca ran a hand over her temple as if she could smooth grief like a wrinkle in fabric. You're very sure of yourself for a man who mops floors, she said, not as an insult, more as a confession that his words had weight. Daniel smiled faintly. I'm not sure of much. I'm just sure of what mattered to my kid when the world turned mean. It wasn't a speech. It was a sandwich, a flashlight, and me sitting on the floor with her until the monster got bored. Sit on the floor. Doesn't scale, she said, and then shook her head at her own reflex. Metrics. Always metrics. It scales one heart at a time, Daniel said. Sophia doesn't need a savior. She needs a mother who shows up even clumsy, even late. The sentence landed like a key finding a lock. It didn't open the door, not yet, but she heard the click. I don't know where to start, Rebecca admitted. 4 words she had not said aloud to another adult in years. Daniel pointed to the water station. Start with a sip. He glanced at her key fob. Then, let me call a driver. You don't need a headline that starts in a parking garage. It should have stung. It didn't. It felt like someone putting a railing under her hand in the dark. Fine, she said. Call. He took out his phone, dialed the building's concierge line, and requested a car with the same calm he used to request more mop heads. When he hung up, he handed her a paper cup of cold water. She drank. It tasted like mercy. I can't pay you for this, she said. I didn't invoice, he replied. Besides, my kid thinks your kid is her friend. That's payment enough. Rebecca blinked. Emily, he nodded. 8, freckles. Believes in rainbows and second chances. She signed to Sophia, Rebecca said. Clumsily. I taught her the first few, Daniel said. She taught me how not to be afraid to look silly when I care. Rebecca turned that over in her mind like a stone she'd found in a river, worn simple, oddly beautiful. I don't know how to be what Sophia needs. He met her eyes. You can learn. People learn languages for deals they'll forget in 5 years. Learning your daughter that sticks. She felt the garage tilt back toward level. The driver texted. Daniel held up his phone. Cars 1 minute out. Rebecca nodded. Mr. Brooks. Yes, ma'am. Why are you helping me? He looked at the concrete, then back at her. Because I've mopped up after a lot of wars you can't see. When someone offers a truce, even a small one, you take it. The headlights of a black sedan swung around the corner. The driver stepped out, opened the rear door, and waited without looking at her face. Rebecca straightened, slid the flask deeper into her bag, and turned to Daniel. Thank you, she said. He gave a small nod. You're welcome. She hesitated. "At the gala, when you signed to Sophia, what did you say?" "2 words," he said. "You're okay." Rebecca's voice was steady again, but soft. "I don't think I am." "Then start there," he said. She got into the car. As it pulled away, she watched him in the side window's reflection, just a man in a work shirt under the humming lights, coiling an orange cord like he had all the time in the world. She imagined him going home to the little girl with freckles, to a kitchen with drawings on the fridge, to a life built out of ordinary courage. On the highway, the city opened around her, and for once Rebecca didn't rehearse a statement or draft a solution in her head. She heard 5 simple words instead, words that were not a brand and not a policy, just a truth. Kids smile when they're seen. In a small apartment across town, Daniel locked up the supply closet and checked his watch. He would make it home before Emily's favorite cartoon ended. Tonight, that felt like a win. He thought of the CEO who had looked at a paper cup of water like it might save her, and of a girl in a midnight dress who had smiled at a silly, clumsy sign. Some walls crack from the top down, he thought. Some from a single human word, and somewhere in the back of his mind, like a lighthouse blinking once in fog, a possibility began to turn slow, patient, steady toward a harbor neither of them had believed they could reach. Saturday light poured through the tall windows of Westridge Academy's art wing, pale and clean as a new page. The building was technically closed, but Miss Patel, who believed art didn't keep office hours, had signed the form that allowed one student to work in Studio B with a parent or guardian present. Sophia Kane had texted 2 names the night before Daniel. Emily. Inside, turpentine breathed from open jars and canvases leaned like restless thoughts against the walls. Sophia stood in front of a blank linen stretched tight on oak. Her midnight blue sweater sleeves were pushed to the elbow, revealing wrists smudged with charcoal. It was the kind of morning that asked a question. What do you dare to say? Today, Emily answered first. She burst through the doorway with the unbothered confidence of Ada backpack bumping her shoulders and a grin that made the room feel less formal. Daniel followed with an apologetic smile and a grocery bag, apples, bottled water, and a pack of wet wipes, because fathers who have lived in hospitals never outgrow preparedness. "Hi," Emily waved, then remembered, and signed the same small word she'd practiced all week. "Friend." Sophia's mouth tilted. Not a big smile, she wasn't built that way, but something warm flickered on. She signed back, "Friend." "Welcome." Then she pointed to an empty stool. Emily climbed it like a mountain and set her sketchbook on the easel beside Sophia's as if they were co-captains of a ship with paint for sails. Daniel hovered near the door. "Are we sure this is okay?" Sophia nodded and tapped the signed permission form on the table. Then with a quick movement she pulled a cloth from a canvas in the corner. The painting underneath had been started and abandoned more than once, edges layered with the archaeology of hesitation. A figure stood at the center, half-formed, turned away, swallowed by brushstrokes dark as storm water. Across the top in pencil, a working title, Mother's Silence. Daniel didn't speak. He stepped closer as if approaching a skittish animal. He took in the black underpaint that made the blues ache deeper, the scrape marks where a palette knife had dragged through wet color, the small places where light pushed back. He didn't understand composition terms the way Miss Patel did, but he understood ache when it wrote itself down. He exhaled more to steady himself than to say anything. Paint says what breath can't. Sophia's eyes lifted to his face, searching to see if he meant it. Then she tipped her head toward the painting and signed slowly so Emily could follow with her eyes. She turned away. The night went quiet. I kept talking. No sound came out. Emily looked from canvas to Sophia and back again. "It's sad," she said softly. Then, "Can you make it less sad?" She offered the question like a daisy, innocent and impossible. Sophia's fingers hesitated. She signed, "Maybe not less. Maybe true." The word hung between them, more fragile than glass. Daniel swallowed. True has a way of making room for better. He didn't step into the role of teacher or critic. He asked questions the kind that hold a light instead of a verdict, If the dark is the truth of the night, where does the morning begin? If silence is the room, where does the door live? Sophia stood very still. Then she dipped a brush into ultramarine and touched the canvas at the far right, a small square of color like a window that had decided to be brave. Emily clapped. "Blue morning?" she announced, then reached into her backpack and pulled out a sheet of gold stickers shaped like tiny stars. "Can we add some?" Daniel smiled. "Let's let the captain decide." Sophia considered. She peeled one star and pressed it to the taped edge of her reference board, not the canvas close enough to whisper far enough to respect the work. She signed to Emily, "Thank you." They fell into an easy rhythm. Daniel sliced apples and set them on a paper towel. Emily drew houses with rainbow chimneys and labeled them home in shaky block letters. Sophia moved in patient arcs, laying warm gray over black, then rinsing, then pulling light like a thread where no door had existed a minute before. When she didn't have a word, she had a color. When she didn't have a sentence, she had a stroke. At one point, she signed, "This part is the hospital hallway." She smudged a soft edge with her thumb. All the voices were running, but my world stood still. Daniel felt the memory like a draft he knew too well. He didn't crowd it with his own. He just said, "That's a hallway I've walked," and let the sentence end there. Time thinned. Outside, a groundskeeper's blower whirred and faded. In Studio B, a story unlearned how to be a wound and remembered how to be a painting. The door eased open. Rebecca Kane stepped inside with the quiet of someone who could empty a room without raising her voice. She was supposed to meet the head of school about a facilities grant. A last-minute text from the assistant had rerouted her, "Sophia is in Studio B working. You might want to see this." She had not expected Daniel. She had not expected Emily. And she had not expected the sight that met her daughter with color on her wrists, light in her eyes, and peace in her posture, standing shoulder to shoulder with a janitor and his freckled child, as if that triad had been written somewhere before any of them were born. For a heartbeat, the old reflex surged, control, the scene command, the space moved the variables. But another thought rose, uninvited, and stubborn kids smile when they're seen. Sophia turned startled brush, pausing midair. Her face changed in stages, surprise caution, and finally a guarded neutrality she wore like a coat even on warm days. Rebecca lifted a hand, unsure what to do with it. Wave, reach. The toolbox, she knew, could not fix this. Emily broke the silence first. "Hi," she chirped, then glanced at Sophia and fumbled to sign the same word. "Hi." Rebecca's gaze softened despite herself. "Hello, Emily." She looked to Daniel. "Mr. Brooks, Ms. Kane," he said, nodding, eyes steady. He didn't apologize for being there. He didn't explain. He occupied his square foot of floor like a man who had paid for it in shifts and overtime and Saturday mornings. Rebecca's eyes finally went to the canvas. The figure, the turned back, the dark that ate everything it touched. Her breath grew thin in her chest. She knew that silhouette the way one knows their own reflection in a dark window. She had stood like that for years, facing away because she didn't know how to face forward without unraveling. Sophia followed her mother's eyes to the painting and braced as if waiting for a verdict that had always been guilty. Rebecca stepped closer, heels careful on the paint-spattered concrete. She didn't ask for translation. She did not perform. She looked. "I see the night," she said, voice low. "I see the part where time refuses to move. I see you talking into a world that wouldn't answer back." Sophia's throat worked. Hope and distrust wrestled in the small muscles of her jaw. Rebecca turned slowly as if any quick motion might break something and reached for the simplest sign she had learned from a corporate workshop she'd dismissed as optics. Years ago, the one that had gathered dust in a drawer, while her daughter grew fluent without her. Beautiful. It wasn't fluent. The angle was off. The movement too stiff. But it was hers. For once, she didn't hire a voice to say what her hands could attempt. Sophia stared. The brush trembled between her fingers. A line of ultramarine fell like a tear and found its way into the shape of the door. Daniel didn't breathe. Emily whispered as if in church she said beautiful. Rebecca swallowed. "May I sit?" No one had ever seen Rebecca Kane ask to sit in a room she could have owned. But she did. She found a stool near the sink and took its spine-straight palms on her knees, as if learning to be small enough to fit into the moment. "I have a meeting," she said after a beat, almost apologetic, "but I wanted to see what you see." She glanced at Daniel, then back at Sophia. "I'm late to it, but I'm here for this." Her eyes returned to the painting. "If this is the hallway," she said softly, "what color is the door? When I turn around, it wasn't a strategy question. It wasn't a test. It was the exact sentence a girl had been waiting for a mother to ask." Sophia blinked and something unclenched. She lifted a loaded brush and drew a thin line of warm light along the door's edge yellow that leaned toward gold as if morning weren't an event, but a decision. She signed, "This color." Rebecca nodded, eyes wet. "Then that's the color I'll look for." Silence settled again, but it was different now. Less like a wall, more like a room where people could breathe. A phone buzzed in Rebecca's bag. She didn't move. She watched as her daughter painted a door into the night and thought of a sentence the janitor had given her in a concrete garage it scales one heart at a time. At last, she stood. "I have to go upstairs," she said, almost reluctant. She looked to Emily. "May I borrow your star?" She gestured to the small gold sticker on the reference board. Emily's eyes went round. "It's for luck," she declared. "Then I'll bring it back with interest," Rebecca replied, and for the first time in years the joke didn't sound like armor. She turned to Daniel. "Thank you for showing up where I didn't know how." She didn't wait for him to absolve her. She took her fault like a receipt and tucked it away to act on later. At the door, she hesitated and signed one more word. Slow, careful, determined. "Try." The room held its breath. Sophia signed back smaller but true. "Try." Rebecca left. For a while, no one spoke. Then Emily, practical as weather, announced, "We need more yellow." Daniel laughed, startled by how right she was, and went to the supply closet. Sophia turned back to the canvas. The door was there now, not a promise, but a presence. She reached for the brush as if reaching for a hand. This time when she painted, the morning arrived a little faster. Seattle rain stitched a gray veil across the morning, soft and relentless. In her office overlooking the Sound, Rebecca Kane stared at an email from the head of school. "Appreciate your visit to Studio B. Small note for safety and liability. Please keep non-students out of the art wing on weekends. Happy to formalize a policy." Beneath it waited another message from Victor Halloway, Great Quarter. "Keep domestic optics quiet. Journal asked for a comment on the gala photo. Declined so far." Rebecca closed the laptop. The room hummed with the kind of quiet that amplified what you didn't want to hear. Yesterday, she had sat on a paint-splattered stool and said a word with her hands. "Try." It had felt like fitting a key to a door she'd never had the courage to push. Now, policy and optics asked for a different key. She took her phone and typed without overthinking. "Ms. Kane, Mr. Brooks, can you meet me behind the gym at Westridge at noon, 5 minutes?" The reply came in a minute. "Daniel, yes, ma'am." Noon found them under the overhang behind the gym rain, spitting off the roof in silver threads. Daniel stood in his navy work shirt, a second-hand jacket zipped against the chill. Emily was at school. He had the watchful stillness of a man who knew how to carry hard conversations with clean hands. "Thank you for coming," Rebecca said. "I'll be direct. The head of school will formalize a policy about non-students in studios. It's not about you, it's liability." He nodded once. "Policies keep kids safe. I respect that. And I need you to keep your distance from Sophia outside your duties." She added the words, precise, practiced. "No weekend sessions. No informal contact." He held her gaze. "I don't have contact with kids. I say hello when they say hello. I wheel a mop. Yesterday my daughter drew beside your daughter. That's all. It's not all to the board," she said. The sentence tasted like tin. They see a headline waiting to happen. Daniel breathed in the rain air. Headlines don't raise kids. People do. She bristled. Don't make this a sermon. He didn't flinch. I won't. But I'll tell you a truth no one in that boardroom will say out loud. Sophia doesn't need a CEO. She needs Rebecca. A small heat flared behind her ribs. You presume a lot for a man who learned my name last week. I learned your daughter's smile yesterday, he said softly. It showed up like sunlight when someone spoke her language. Lightning of anger, quick defensive, flashed through her. This is exactly the problem. You've stepped into something you don't understand. Sophia is vulnerable. People take advantage of that. I've seen that too, he said. That's why I step between cruelty and the kid who can't hear it coming. And in the middle, she returned steel sharpening you've made yourself central to a story that is not yours. He let the words land. When he answered, his voice was steady as a level floor. I'm not the center. I'm a bridge. Bridges don't own the river. They just make crossing possible. Rebecca's throat tightened. Bridges collapse. Only the ones no one maintains. Silence pressed close. Rain softened. Somewhere, a whistle blew on the lower field. She drew herself taller. I'm asking you to stay away. He absorbed it like a wave taking a stone. If distance keeps Sophia safe, I'll take the long way around. But understand this, the safest thing for her is you not my absence. He hesitated, then added gentler, You don't have to deserve her to try again. You just have to try again. The last words were a mirror he didn't hold up like a weapon. He held it like a chance, her jaw set. This conversation is over. He nodded. No victory in it, only acceptance. Yes, ma'am. He turned to go, then paused. One more thing. When you can't find the right words, hands can help. They don't care how rich you are. They only care if you mean it. He walked away into the gauze of Rain Shoulder's square steps, unhurried. Rebecca stayed where she was, the word mean echoing in a room behind her ribs that hadn't been opened in years. The policy memo went out that afternoon. Effective immediately, no non-students allowed in studios during weekends without staff supervision. Contractors to avoid non-essential interaction with students on academic grounds. It was bland, administrative, the way most walls are built, one neutral sentence at a time. Daniel signed for the memo with a ballpoint pen that skipped on cheap paper. The facilities manager, a decent man with inherited rules, cleared his throat. Brooks, not my call. They want you on the north lot this month. Fewer student hallways. Daniel nodded. I understand. At home that night, he explained it to Emily over tomato soup. She listened, spoon paused midair. So, no more Saturday painting, she asked. Not at school, he said. We can make art at our table. We can invite Sophia if her mom says yes. Emily thought about that and then put her small hand over his. We can draw doors. Yeah, kiddo, he said, smiling that didn't quite reach his eyes. We can draw all the doors. Saturday returned like a habit. Studio B smelled of gesso and clean water. Sophia waited by the window with 2 stools ready. 10 minutes passed. 15. She texted Emily a simple question mark. A reply came back as a photo, a crayon door on notebook paper colored bright, a gold star in the corner. Under it, in careful letters, Mom said, We can't go to your school. Can we draw at my house sometime? Emily Sophia stared at the screen until the words blurred. She swallowed and turned to the empty stool. The room felt bigger than it was. Ms. Patel stepped in, kind eyes already apologizing. She spoke and signed slowly, New rule. I'm sorry, Sophia. I fought for it, but safety. Sophia signed I understand, which was not true. She stayed anyway. She painted anyway. But the color didn't come when she called it. The brush felt heavy. The door she'd opened in Chapter 5 refused to widen without the small freckled co-captain who had declared blue morning, like a weather forecast for the heart. When the studio closed, Sophia walked across campus scanning for a navy shirt with a coil of extension cord. She saw him at the far end of the north lot repairing a flickering exit sign, an ordinary act of keeping danger from dressing as a doorway. She waved. He lifted a hand, a small contained greeting. He didn't cross the distance. Neither did she. The new wall stood where no wall had been yesterday, but her hands wanted to talk. She signed from across the space large so he could see, "Thank you. I miss the quiet with people in it." He signed back as big as dignity allowed me to. A security guard rounded the corner whose job was to enforce good intentions. Sophia lowered her hands and Daniel turned back to his ladder and the world pretended logic had won. That evening, the Kane kitchen gleamed like an ad for stainless steel. Sophia stood by the island, her phone on the counter, Emily's drawing beside it like a small flag of truce. Rebecca entered, set her handbag down, and reached for the sink. She washed her hands, slow, buying a few seconds the way adults do when they're about to say something that matters. Sophia didn't wait. Her hands carved air precise and firm. You made a rule to keep him away. Rebecca took a breath. I asked the school to apply a policy for everyone. It's safer for students. Safer for you. Sophia signed a blade wrapped in truth. Rebecca forced her voice to level. He's staff, Sophia. He's not family. He shouldn't be. He is human. Sophia cut in. He sees me. You don't. The sentence landed like a gavel. Rebecca flinched. I'm trying, she said, and the words sounded small and true and insufficient all at once. Sophia's fingers trembled, then steadied. Trying is not checking a box. Trying is not hiding behind rules. Trying is standing where it hurts and not running. Rebecca's gaze dropped to the drawing on the counter, the crayon door, the gold star. She pressed her palm over the paper as if to hold it still. Rules exist because when things go wrong, people ask why there weren't any. Sophia signed slower, each motion an indictment written in grace. Things already went wrong. You weren't there. Then you forbade the only people who sat with me while I fixed it. Rebecca opened her mouth and closed it again. She reached for the one tool she had started to sharpen. She signed, halting but determined, afraid. Then I am afraid. Sophia blinked. Her chin quivered. For a second, the armor loosened. Rebecca continued, hands clumsy, eyes wet. I don't know how to be what you need. When I fail, I hide in work. I make rules. I buy ladders instead of learning to climb. Sophia stared the kitchen clock loud in the pause. Then she signed small. I needed you. She tapped her chest once, fiercely. I need you now. Rebecca stepped closer, then stopped as if a line were painted on the tile. I will learn, she said aloud, then echoed it with her hands rough but real. Learn. Try. Sophia held her mother's eyes. Then, stop pushing away the people who help me breathe. Rebecca swallowed. A part of her wanted to argue the liability memo the board, the headlines, the sensible scaffolding of someone who lives high above ground. Another part of her, the part that had sat on a paint-spattered stool and asked, what color is the door, understood that this was not about policy. It was about poverty of presence. She nodded, once a decision she would have to make again and again. I won't undo the school's rule, she said carefully, but I won't stand in the way of you seeing Emily, or Daniel, in our home, with me there, not as a guard, as your mother. Sophia's breath shuddered out. That single shift with me there moved something heavy that had sat on her chest for years. She signed, hesitant, hope opening like mourning together, Rebecca said, and for the first time the word didn't feel like a promise made to get out of a conversation. It felt like a road you choose and then choose again at every mile marker. Sophia reached for the drawing, traced the gold star with her thumb, then slid the paper toward her mother. Bring it back with interest. She signed, echoing Rebecca's joke from the studio, testing whether humor could live here too. Rebecca let out a sound that might one day be a laugh. Deal. They stood in the kitchen's bright hush, two silhouettes that had been turned away for too long now, angling awkwardly bravely toward each other. Across town, Daniel rinsed paint from Emily's fingers at the sink. On the table behind them lay 3 new drawings, a door, a lighthouse, and a bridge. Emily had labeled the last one in blocky letters, UOS. "Think she's mad at me?" Emily asked, meaning Sophia. "Mad at the world," Daniel said. "Sometimes the world looks like the nearest adult." "Are we nearest?" Emily frowned. "Sometimes," he said, pressing a towel into her hands. "Sometimes we're just close enough to keep the wind off." Emily nodded as if this made perfect sense. "Can we invite Sophia for pancakes?" "If her mom says yes," he said. Emily considered. "And we should teach her mom the sign for pancakes so she can say yes faster." Daniel smiled. "That's a good plan." He looked at the drawings again. Doors, lighthouse, bridge, ordinary nouns upgraded to verbs by love. He thought of Rebecca under the gym overhang rain stitching the air, both of them trying to speak without making anything worse. He didn't know if she could do the work, but he had seen her hands try to form a single word and mean it. Sometimes that was where truth began, not as a speech, but as a tremor. In the Kane kitchen, Rebecca opened her laptop. Not for an email. Not for a memo. For a search bar she had avoided for 9 years. Beginner ASL classes, Seattle. She stared at the list, then clicked the one that met on Tuesday nights at a community center that didn't care about her title, only her willingness to show up. She closed the laptop and looked at Sophia. "Tuesday," she said, and lifted her hands. Together, Sophia's answer was instant, a small bright door swinging on new hinges. Together. Outside, the rain thinned to a mist fine as forgiveness. Inside, a mother and daughter stood in a kitchen where rules had been weapons and were now becoming tools. The wall hadn't fallen, but it had learned a new language for cracking. Sunday light spilled over the Kane estate like a quiet apology. The back lawn, usually a formal sweep of green, was now a small republic of joy. Sidewalk chalk constellations on the flagstones, a mason jar of daisies stolen from the edge of a hedge, 2 easels facing the lake as if waiting for the horizon to sit for a portrait. From the French doors, Rebecca watched unnoticed. Sophia knelt beside Emily at the patio, their heads bent close over a river of chalk blue that cut through gray stone. Emily drew a square and labeled it in careful block letters, door. Sophia added a thin line of yellow along the edge, mourning hiding inside. Emily clapped. Sophia smiled, real and unguarded, the kind that belonged on a child's face and not as it so often did on a mask. Kids smile when they're seen. The sentence had followed Rebecca all week like a string tied to her wrist. Inside, Daniel set 2 mugs of hot chocolate on a tray, the steam ribboning upward. He paused just long enough to catch Rebecca's eye through the glass. He didn't step into the space with a speech or a solution. He tipped his head, asking without words if it was okay to bring the tray outside. She nodded. With me here, she had said in the kitchen 2 nights ago. Not as a guard, as a mother. Daniel carried the tray through the open doors and set it on the patio. "Delivery," he said the word warm, without trying to be charming. He signed it, "Too hot chocolate," a little theatrical so Emily would giggle. She did. Sophia's laugh was silent but contagious. Rebecca felt it in her ribs. "Thank you," Rebecca said. Daniel met her eyes. "My pleasure." He didn't look around in awe at the lake or the manicured beds the way people sometimes did here. He didn't perform humility or gratitude. He behaved like a man carrying 2 mugs to 2 kids who had earned them with chalk on their hands. Sophia signed to Rebecca slow so her mother could catch up, "Sit with us." Rebecca's heart stuttered. She crossed the stone and lowered herself to the patio, the silk of her blouse conceding to chalk dust without complaint. She picked up a stub of blue and let it mark her thumb. "What are we drawing?" Emily leaned into her. "Roads," she announced. "To pancakes." Daniel laughed. "That's an ambitious infrastructure bill." Rebecca surprised herself by playing along. "I have a board meeting on syrup allocation next week." Sophia watched them with eyes that wanted to trust. She signed to her mother, careful, deliberate. "You joked." Rebecca signed back, hands shaky but sure. Trying. Sophia's mouth tilted. Me too. For a while, no one hurried the moment. They sipped chocolate and added stars to the chalk sky. Daniel showed Emily how to shade with the side of the chalk to make the river look like it moved. Sophia drew a tiny lighthouse on a pebble and set it at the edge of the blue. Rebecca felt the old armor loosen in its seams, not by force, but by use. When the cups were emptied and the sun slid a little west, Emily darted after a butterfly. Sophia followed, scattering a small storm of chalk dust. Their laughter, one heard, one seen, braided through the hedges. Rebecca stood, brushed her palms on her skirt, and turned to Daniel. "Walk with me," she asked, surprising herself again. They took the gravel path that curved along the roses. Daniel kept his hands in his pockets, giving the moment room. "I made a rule this week," Rebecca said. "Then I made a different choice," I noticed, Daniel said. "Rules are good fences. Choices are good gates." She glanced at him. "Do you always have a line ready?" "Only the ones I've tested," he said. "Some fail inspection." They walked in quiet for a few steps. The lake lifted a mild breeze over the lawn. "I've been to a lot of funerals." Rebecca said the words dry as paper until they hit air. "One. I think I'll be in for the rest of my life." Daniel didn't rush to comfort. "Grief isn't an event," he said. "It's a country. You don't leave it. You learn the roads." She stopped and faced him. "How did you learn?" He looked out at the water. "Anna taught me how to be where pain lived without fixing it. She was a nurse on the oncology floor. On good days, she came home humming. On bad days, she came home quiet, and we ate cereal on the floor." He smiled, small and true. "When she got sick, the quiet came home to stay." "Did you pray?" Rebecca asked, then shook her head as if retracting the intrusion. "I don't mean I listened," he said, rescuing her from the apology. "To what didn't have sound. Sometimes that was a kid in a bed 3 doors down. Sometimes it was my own daughter breathing in the next room. Anna taught me some signs so I could talk to a boy whose world had gone underwater. Hungry. Scared. Okay. The small words that hold the big ones together." Rebecca felt her throat ache. "I spent years buying ladders," she said quietly. "I forgot you can also kneel." "Presence is a posture," Daniel said. "Not a policy." She absorbed it like shade. "You love your daughter well." "I've loved her poorly, too," he admitted. "Anger comes out sideways when you don't give it a door. I learned to give it one with a hinge and a handle." She traced a finger over a rose leaf, the veins delicate as a map. "I don't know if I can be what Sophia needed then." "Then is gone," he said. "She needs you now." They reached the small overlook where the lawn met the lake. Across the water, a rower cut a clean line through afternoon. Behind them, Emily squealed and Sophia signed something exuberant with both hands. "I enrolled in an ASL class," Rebecca said, still looking at the water. "Tuesday nights. Community Center on 34th. Daniel smiled. "Good place. They teach the language and the patients it rides in on." "Will you be there?" she asked, then added quickly, I just—" "Sometimes," he said. "Emily likes the excuse to spell snack foods." Rebecca huffed a laugh. "I'll have the board approve a pretzel budget." "Optics," he deadpanned. It felt shockingly good to laugh with someone who didn't need anything from her but her presence. She turned to him. "Tell me the truth, Daniel. When you saw the photo from the gala Sophia alone, what did you think of me?" He didn't look away. "That you were carrying a house on your back and forgot to open the door." She nodded once, accepting the blow because it was clean and deserved. "I want to fix what I broke." "Don't fix it," he said gently. "Hold it while it heals." She closed her eyes. "I don't know how." He pointed to the lawn where Emily was showing Sophia how to blow a dandelion clock without scattering the wish before it was ready. "Start there," he said. "Watch who she is when no one is measuring her. Learn that girl. Then learn everything else." They walked back as the girls finished their chalk roads. Emily ran up out of breath. "We made it to pancakes," she announced, pointing to a wobbly drawing of a stack with rivers of yellow syrup. "Ambitious allocation executed," Rebecca said, and Emily grinned like she'd been made chief syrup officer. Sophia tugged Rebecca's sleeve and signed Tuesday. Together, Rebecca lifted her hands. Together. The shape wasn't perfect. It was hers. Daniel's phone buzzed. He read the screen and slipped it back in his pocket. "We should go," he said to Emily. "Homework's not afraid of the weekend." Emily groaned theatrically. "Justice is a myth." Rebecca smiled. "I'll second that motion." At the doors, Daniel paused. He looked like he might say something and decided to risk it. "You're different today than you were in the garage," he said. "I'm listening today," she answered. "The quiet isn't as loud when someone shares it." He nodded, the kind of nod men give each other on docks and in waiting rooms. Then, the armor's doing its job. "What job is that?" she asked. "To protect what's soft while it learns to be strong," he said. "Not to hide it forever." He took Emily's hand. Sophia signed, "See you" to Emily, who signed back pancakes as if it were a date on the calendar of the heart. Daniel glanced at Rebecca. "If you're comfortable, Sunday is our pancake morning." Open invitation. Rebecca didn't answer right away. Invitations were usually things she sent, not received. She felt the flicker of the old reflex control curate command, and then something quieter stepped in. "We'll bring syrup," she said. He smiled. Board approved. After they left, Rebecca stood on the patio and looked down at the chalk door with its thin yellow line. She knelt, ignoring the protest of expensive fabric, and traced the yellow with her fingertip until it glowed brighter. When she stood, her thumb was the color of morning. Inside, she washed her hands at the sink and caught her reflection in the window, the lake behind her, the chalk on the stone, the place where two worlds had backed away from their corners. In the next room, Sophia was texting with both thumbs, a small grin she didn't know she wore. Rebecca watched her daughter the way Daniel had told her to, as if meeting someone new, someone unmeasured. Her phone buzzed. A message from Victor Seattle Journal following up again. Human interest angle. "Call me." Rebecca stared at it and then turned her phone over on the counter. For the first time in a long time, the headline she was writing was not for the city. It was for a house learning where its doors were. On the patio, a breeze lifted the daisies in the mason jar. The chalk river held the sun without melting. And somewhere between a kitchen sink and a gravel path, a woman who had mistaken armor for identity felt it crack just enough to let light in, just enough to let love out. Westridge Academy's gallery glowed like a lantern at dusk. White walls, oak floors, soft piano, looping under the low buzz of conversation. Parents in crisp suits and teachers in sensible shoes clustered around pedestals, while students floated equal parts nerves and pride. On a center wall under a halo of track lights hung a canvas as tall as a door. Sophia had retitled it, After Silence. Daniel arrived with Emily 5 minutes early because being early had saved him more than once. Emily wore a yellow dress she had outgrown in the hem, but not in the heart. She pressed her face to the glass at the entryway and whispered, "It smells like new books and hope." "Then we're in the right place," Daniel said. Inside, Miss Patel waved them forward, eyes bright. "You made it." "She's almost ready," she whispered. "She asked for you." Sophia stood near the far corner, hands tucked into the sleeves of a soft gray sweater, hair pinned back with a humble barrette instead of diamonds. When she saw them, her shoulders dropped a fraction, the kind of relief you feel when the person who knows your worst pages shows up anyway. Emily barreled into a hug. "You look like a painting," she declared. Sophia signed, "You look like sunshine," and Emily giggled because she caught the sign for sun and felt rich. Daniel offered a small nod that said, "I see you," without stealing the moment. Then he turned to the canvas. He had watched pieces of this become itself, but the final truth still stopped him. The left half was a storm, black and violet, dragged in violent arcs, words embedded in the paint so faint you had to lean in to read them. Music, daddy home as if caught in tar. The right half shifted dark grays yielding to bruised blues, then to a seam of light that wasn't a sun but a decision. Along that seam, hands not realistic, but unmistakable forming signs like stepping stones. At the bottom corner, a small door stood ajar. The edge of it was the same thin yellow Sophia had drawn in chalk on Rebecca's patio. Daniel exhaled. "You built a way out that still keeps where you came from," he murmured. "That's courage, kiddo." Sophia's eyes went shiny. She signed, "You helped me find the hinge." People gathered. The head of school tapped the mic. "Welcome, everyone. Tonight we celebrate our students' work, their skill, yes, but also their voice." He gestured toward the center wall. And sometimes voice looks like color. Sometimes it looks like hands. Rebecca slipped in just as the applause began. Navy suit, clean lines, hair down, for once no entourage. She paused when she saw the crowd part in front of After Silence and understood with a single breath that the night would not let her off easy. Her gaze found Sophia first. Even across the room she could read her daughter's posture alert braced a little braver than yesterday. Next, she saw Daniel and Emily, and then she looked at the painting and the ground under her feet shifted a degree. She had seen the draft in Studio B, but this wasn't a draft. This was a verdict and a prayer in the same frame. The left side silhouette turned away, shoulder rigid, felt like a fingerprint she'd left on all the wrong doorknobs. The right side light, thin as a pencil line, stubborn as morning, felt like the promise she had started to make on Tuesday nights. Rebecca moved closer. The room dimmed a shade as the head of school raised the lights over the stage. "We'll have a brief talk by our featured student artist," he announced. "We are honored to present Sophia Kane." The applause was kind, not extravagant. The hush after was reverent. Sophia stepped to the small podium and did not touch the mic. Miss Patel stood behind her, ready to interpret into voice. Sophia's hands lifted steady, now stronger than the tremor that had visited a few months ago when she had been asked to read a poem aloud in English class and stood silent instead. She signed, "I used to think silence meant nothing. Then I learned it could be a country. I lived there. I paint the map." Ms. Patel's voice carried Sophia's meaning to the hearing. A few parents leaned in. Rebecca stood still as a confession. Sophia continued. "On the left side of my painting you'll find the night the words I lost the music I can still feel. On the right, the quiet where I learned a new language and the door where light begins. I did not paint villains. I painted distance." A murmur rippled the back row. People like clear arrows, not moral complexity. Sophia didn't flinch. "This is my truth," she signed simply. "Not the whole world, just the part that is mine to tell." Daniel felt the sentence land like a bell only honesty could ring. Emily squeezed his hand so hard his fingers protested. He didn't let go. Sophia ended by signing, "Thank you to my teacher, to my friend, to the people learning my language, slow, imperfect, but trying. I see you trying. I am too." The applause rose steady at first, then fuller the sound of people recognizing they had been trusted with something fragile. Rebecca clapped a second behind as if her hands had to travel from a long way off. The crowd swelled toward the painting. Compliments bloomed like obvious flowers. So expressive, so brave, so grown. A woman with a press badge slid near the front. She had the polite smile of someone used to getting what she needed. "Ms. Kane," she said, turning to Rebecca, "Kelsey from the Seattle Journal. We'd love a quote for tomorrow's arts feature. Maybe a few words on how your daughter's journey has shaped your leadership on inclusion at Kane Global." Daniel watched the muscle in Rebecca's jaw tense. Newspaper questions had seams. This one had a hook hidden in the cotton. Rebecca answered evenly. "Tonight belongs to the students' work." She glanced to Sophia. "To their truth?" Kelsey nodded, persistent. "Of course." Still many readers were moved by the gala photo, a human interest angle. Hard for the public to reconcile the powerhouse CEO with a daughter who seems isolated. Rebecca's eyes did not leave the reporter's face. "My daughter is not a headline," she said. She's a person. She's also a brilliant artist. That's the story." Sophia watched chest tight. She didn't need sound to hear the pitch of the room change. Kelsey turned, switching targets with professional grace. "Sophia, would you say your mother's demanding career contributed to the themes of After Silence?" Ms. Patel stepped closer, gentle steel in her posture. "We can channel questions through the school's communications office." Kelsey softened her tone. "It's just a powerful image, a young woman finding her voice where sound was taken while her mother, 'I'm right here,'" Rebecca said, "not raised, not brittle, just present in a way she had avoided for years. And I'm learning to listen." Something in that answer took the oxygen out of the reporter's next question. Kelsey pivoted, scribbled a note, and drifted to safer ground. The head of school resumed his practiced charm and invited guests to view the rest of the exhibits. The cluster around After Silence eased. Rebecca stepped to the canvas. "No rush, no armor. You built a door," she said, more to the painting than to anyone. "I see the color." Sophia stood at her side, not touching, but near enough that warmth could translate. She signed yellow. "Morning." Rebecca lifted her hands, deliberate. "I am trying to turn." The sign wasn't perfect. The meaning was. Sophia's face broke in that particular way. Grief and gratitude share a border. She touched the edge of the frame with 2 fingers, a private right. "I see you," she signed. Daniel hung back a comfortable distance. He did not insert himself into the reunion he had worked toward. He simply made himself useful, handing Ms. Patel a bottle of water, retrieving a stray program for Emily, situating himself where he could be reached without becoming a center. Across the room, Victor Halloway appeared like a suit had grown legs. He shook hands in measured arcs until he reached Rebecca. "Impressive turnout," he said. "And the piece is arresting." "Accurate," Rebecca replied. Victor's smile thinned. "Seattle Journal is circling again. We'll steer it." "Still optics." "Victor," she cut in, voice pure granite, and mercy tonight isn't a brand exercise. His brow flickered at the word mercy he could not hear but felt. He pivoted to donors. Rebecca exhaled. Ms. Patel approached. "There's a short Q&A for students," she said to Sophia, then to Rebecca, "optional for family." Sophia nodded, nerves rising in her chest like a wave she could surf this time. "I'll be there," Rebecca said. Emily tugged Daniel's sleeve. "Can we stay?" "We wouldn't miss it," he answered. The Q&A was kind and messy like youth. Questions came about, brushes about meaning, about whether the door meant forgiveness. Sophia signed her answers, Ms. Patel voicing them with care. "The door means possibility," Sophia said. "Forgiveness is a room behind it. I'm still learning the layout." A father in the back raised his hand. "What do you want people to feel when they look at your painting?" Sophia paused, then signed, "Permission. To tell the truth without making enemies out of the people we still love." The room went quiet in the way that asks for no applause. Then it exhaled all at once. After, as people filtered to cookies and paper cups of punch, Rebecca and Daniel found themselves side by side at the edge of the room where the noise softened. For a second, they were just 2 adults who had walked through their own fires to bring a child to a night that mattered. "You handled the reporter," Daniel said. "I didn't run," Rebecca answered. He tipped his head. "That's new." "It's Tuesday nights, actually," she said, allowing herself a dry smile. "And Sunday mornings. And a janitor who thinks bridges are a theology." "I prefer carpentry," he said. Across the gallery, Kelsey spoke with Victor, both glancing toward the painting. A tickle of dread brushed Rebecca's spine. She saw the angle they would try the Titan, and the tear, a woman reframed by a child's canvas, the barbed praise of a profile that makes you human so it can sell you. "I won't let them turn her into leverage," she said to herself as much as to Daniel. "Then don't," he said. "You're the gatekeeper now. Keep the gate for the kid, not the company." She looked at him, a question she wasn't ready to ask warming behind her eyes. Before she could name it, Mrs. Patel called Sophia to pose with her work. Sophia waved them over, "Stand with me," and they all stepped forward, an unorthodox constellation, The artist, her mother, the janitor, and the child who believed in doors. The flash popped. In the second of white, Rebecca thought, "This is the headline I can live with." Then the thought dimmed as at the edge of her vision she caught Kelsey snapping her own shot angling to capture Rebecca's profile turned slightly away from the canvas. The night didn't break, but a seam formed thin and real. On the way out, two seniors whispered near the coat rack, not cruelly, just thoughtlessly. Wild right, her mom basically admits she wasn't there. Imagine losing your hearing and your mom at the same time. Sophia didn't hear the words, but she felt the air. Rebecca did hear them. They landed. They would echo later. Emily reached for Sophia's hand. Daniel reached for the car keys. Rebecca reached for a steadiness she could borrow until her own arrived. Outside, the gallery lights spilled a square of gold onto the sidewalk. The four of them stepped through it like people crossing a threshold. Behind them, after silence hung on the wall, the door still ajar, the yellow still thin, still stubborn. Tomorrow would bring headlines and angles. But tonight the truth had taken up its space. And in the quiet that followed applause, something old in Rebecca broke without breaking her just enough to let the next chapter in. The gallery emptied in polite waves, but the night held its breath. Out in the parking lot, sodium lights cast long, merciless shadows. Rebecca's phone kept buzzing. Victor the Journal, a PR draft she did not open. She wasn't reading headlines. She was trying not to become one. Daniel buckled Emily into his sedan. "You did good, kiddo." Emily beamed. Sophia was brave. Daniel glanced over the roof of the car. 30 yards away, Rebecca stood beside her black sedan like someone deciding which version of herself to drive home. Sophia was a few steps off, texting Miss Patel. A thank you. Finger's quick face still flushed from applause. Rebecca called across the space. "Mr. Brooks." Daniel heard the tone before the words. He closed Emily's door gently. "Yes, ma'am." Rebecca walked toward him, heels ticking. "Whatever you've been saying to my daughter, stop." Daniel didn't move. "I told her what her painting already knew. You encouraged her to turn our life into a public autopsy." Her voice didn't rise. It chilled. "You've made yourself indispensable to a child who deserves professional boundaries." He met her eyes. "Don't confuse the person who turned on a light with the fire." Sophia looked up, catching the shape of their bodies, the angle of their mouths. She walked over, signing as she came. "Is something wrong?" Rebecca's hands hesitated, then lifted rigid, imperfect. She searched for a sign and couldn't find one that meant overstepped without becoming betrayed. She dropped her hands. "Get in the car, Sophia." Sophia didn't. "Talk to me," she signed. "Not around me." Rebecca swallowed. "We are leaving." Sophia stood her ground. She signed with controlled intensity, each gesture clean as a blade. "Why are you angry at the one person who listened? Because listening isn't the same as leading," Rebecca said. Sophia's hands flashed. "You have led me away from every room where I could breathe." Daniel shifted, ready to step back to become sky. Rebecca saw it and mistook it for strategy. "Mr. Brooks, this is between my daughter and me." Daniel nodded quietly. "I agree," he said, and did not move away. The air tightened. A couple crossed the lot and quickened their pace when they felt it. Sophia signed faster now, anger and grief taking turns. "You never asked what my painting meant. You never asked how the darkness felt. You made rules so you didn't have to learn my room." Rebecca took a breath that looked like defeat in reverse. "I am learning," she said. "Tuesday nights. One class does not fix 9 years," Sophia cut in. "Nothing fixes 9 years," Rebecca replied, and the truth of it made her voice unsteady. "But something starts the 10th. Sophia's composure wavered. She signed smaller, but the words hit harder. Then, "Tell me the truth you never told. The one behind your eyes." The wind slid under Rebecca's coat. She had spent a decade keeping this sentence from daylight as if daylight could indict her. "Not here," she said. "Please." Here, Sophia said aloud the one word rough a muscle she rarely used. She put her palm to her chest, then pointed to the ground. Here. A door opened in the school building. Miss Patel looked out, read the air in one glance, and withdrew. The night belonged to them. Rebecca's fingers trembled. "I was driving," she said. The words were simple and catastrophic. That night. Sophia didn't move. Her face emptied, then flooded. "You were." I swerved. Rebecca continued each image like a shard she owed back. Black ice. Headlights too close. Your father reached for my hand, and then she stopped. When the car stopped, the world didn't. For me. For you, it did. Sophia stared. The lot blurred. "You never told me." "I told the lawyers," Rebecca said, voice raw. "I told doctors. I told the ceiling at 3 a.m. I couldn't tell you and survived the echo." Tears gathered in Sophia's eyes, hot and bewildered. She signed slower than before, as if translating a new language mid-sentence. "Did I lose my hearing? Because the impact damaged your auditory nerves," Rebecca said. "The doctors said nothing could have changed that. But I was behind the wheel." She set a hand against her throat. "And I could not bear the sound of your father's favorite song, so I sold the piano and pretended silence was mercy." Sophia's shoulders shook. "You took his music," she whispered, the sound barely there. "I did," Rebecca said. "No defense, no spin. I took what hurt me and called it helping you." Daniel's breath hitched. Emily watched from the car, wide-eyed and still sensing that the night had come to a too quiet place. Sophia's hands lifted again, but the signs stumbled. "You sent me away," she managed. "You let strangers tell me who I was becoming. You stood in doorways and didn't come in." Rebecca nodded once the motion small and devastating. "I was a coward who called herself busy." The words cost her. She didn't hide the bill. Sophia took a half-step back as if distance could translate what love could not. "I needed you to be deaf with me, and you chose to be silent instead." Rebecca flinched because it was too much, and because it was exactly right. "I didn't know how to be with you without hearing your father and your laughter," she said. "I punished the echo, not the cause." "You punished me," Sophia said, voice breaking on the second word. Daniel stepped in not to fix, but to hold the room. "This is too much for a parking lot," he said gently. "There's a classroom by the music wing. 10 steps, 4 chairs, no audience." Rebecca looked at Sophia. "Please." Sophia turned without answering. They walked in a tight, brittle silence, Daniel a respectful pace behind Emily, trailing like a small moon. The music room smelled like lemon oil and sheet music. A gray piano stood under a dust cover like a sleeping animal. Rebecca closed the door. The quiet deepened. Sophia faced her mother, hands at her sides, fingers flexing for words. "Why didn't you learn my language then?" "Because every time I tried, my hands looked like his," Rebecca said. "Because I wanted to fix what I broke and couldn't, so I fixed everything else and called it love. Because I confused paying for your future with paying attention to your present." Sophia's tears fell hard now. "I woke up in a world with no sound and no mother," she signed. "I learned how to breathe in water, and you stood on the shore and told me to be brave." Rebecca reached into empty air. "I thought, if I made the world respect you, schools, programs, tutors, you would not need me to be good at the one thing I was failing." "I needed you to fail near me," Sophia said. "Not across town." The sentence stopped both women. Daniel pressed his palm to the door, steadying his own chest. Rebecca walked to the piano. She pulled the cover off with careful hands. The keys gleamed like teeth. She pressed one soft. The note rang in the room and died. "Your father used to play this when I worked late," she said. "He'd play until you fell asleep on the sofa and then carry you upstairs. I thought if I took the music away, the pain would stop knocking. It didn't. It learned the code to the back door." Sophia stared at the keys. Then, slowly, deliberately, she set her fingers over the cool ivory and pressed a chord she could not hear and would always feel. It vibrated up her arms into the memory of a house that had been loud with love. She turned to her mother, shoulders shuddering. "Do you love me? Or do you love the girl I was before the accident?" Rebecca didn't blink. "I love you. I loved you wrong." Silence filled the room, not empty, not merciful. Honest. Sophia shook her head like she could clear it with motion. "I can't stay in this room," she signed. "Not right now." Rebecca's mouth opened and closed. "I'll drive you home." "I'm not going home," Sophia signed. Daniel did not step in, but he felt the ground shift under all three of them. "You can come to our place for the night," he said softly to Sophia. "Just a couch and too many pancake plans. No solving, just breathing." Rebecca's eyes flashed fear, reflex, pride, all the familiar soldiers. Sophia. Sophia kept her gaze on Daniel, then on Emily, pressed to his side. "Safe," she signed. Emily nodded solemnly. "Pinky promise." Sophia's chin trembled. She looked at her mother. "I need a door you can't stand in while you learn how to knock." Rebecca inhaled like someone surfacing. She reached for the only honest door she had. "I won't stop you," she said. "I will not make my need your leash." She looked at Daniel. "Please text me that she's there. And in the morning, let me try again." Daniel held her gaze not as employee to employer, but as one parent to another on a night with too much history. "We'll keep the light on," he said, "and the seat at the table." Rebecca nodded. She looked at Sophia, memorizing the exact shape of her at this age in this room, under this terrible and necessary truth. She lifted her hands and signed as carefully as her shaking allowed. "I am sorry. I love you. I will be here when you turn back." Sophia closed her eyes. She signed one word that could mean many things: faith, fury, forgiveness, not yet. Later. They left the music room, Daniel and Emily leading Sophia between them, a small constellation relocating for air. Rebecca stayed. She set her palm on the piano's wood and felt the night hum through it. Out in the lot, the sodium lights hummed. The Journal's draft headline waited in some reporter's outbox, eager to be less than the truth. But in a small apartment across town, a couch would become a lifeboat, and a kitchen would make room for one more bowl. Rebecca stood alone at the keyboard she had tried to silence, finally understanding the simplest law of love: you can't protect a secret and a child with the same pair of hands. She slid the dust cover back, turned off the light, and walked into a night that did not let her off the hook and did not take her hope. Tomorrow would be the breaking point. Tonight was the cost of telling the truth. Daniel's apartment was small, clean, and kind. The kind was what you felt first. He set a folded quilt on the couch like it was a promise. Emily brought over a mismatched pillow with cartoon clouds and announced, "This one works. I tested it on bad dreams." Sophia nodded, clutching her backpack. The room smelled faintly of pancakes and laundry soap, and the quiet here didn't press on her. It breathed. Daniel held up his phone. "Text sent," he said gently. "Your mom knows you're safe. Safe." The word landed like warm tea in winter. Sophia exhaled and signed, "Thank you." Emily tugged her sleeve. "I have extra pajamas. They're ridiculous. That helps." She darted away and returned with flannel bottoms covered in tiny yellow suns. "No one cries in these. House rule." Sophia's smile was small, but real. "I'll try." "Trying counts double here," Daniel said. They ate late scrambled eggs, toast, a sliced apple at the small table by the window. No one asked for a summary of the night. No one presented a plan. They just let the food say what food says when it's offered without strings. You belong at a table. When the dishes were finished, Emily yawned and leaned against Sophia's shoulder. "If you can't sleep," she murmured, "the fridge light is friendly." She toddled off to bed, her rabbit under one arm. Daniel unfolded the quilt. "Couch is yours. Bathroom's down the hall. No solving anything after 9 p.m. Another house rule: we save courage for mornings." Sophia nodded. "Okay." He hesitated. then signed slowly, making sure each shape was clear. "You are not a burden," he added aloud. "Good night, kiddo." She sank into the couch, the suns on her pajamas, grinning at the ceiling. For the first time in a long time, the dark didn't feel like a verdict. It felt like a room with a door. Across town, the Kane house was a cathedral emptied between services. Rebecca stood in the kitchen, hands flat on the cool marble phone face down beside the sink. Daniel's text glowed in her mind. "She's here. We'll keep the light on." Rebecca's breath hitched. She opened the cabinet, reached for the old flask, and stopped. She set a glass under the tap instead. Water thundered, then steadied. She drank like it could lower a fever. She walked to the piano she had uncovered earlier that night and rested her palm on the wood. "I love you," she whispered into the hush. Not sure if she meant her husband, her daughter, the girl she had been before black ice taught her fears grammar. Maybe all of them. Her phone buzzed. "Victor Morning Show wants you at 7:10. We can control the narrative." Another buzz, Seattle Journal finalizing copy. She powered the phone off. Tonight wasn't about narrative, it was about repair. She scrolled through her mind for a voice she trusted and landed on a memory of Daniel in the garage. "You don't have to deserve her to try again." She climbed the stairs, sat at her desk, and opened a blank email that wasn't to PR, wasn't to legal, wasn't to the board. To Daniel Brooks. Subject, a favor. "I need to talk to my daughter with my own hands. I don't want to outsource her heart. Will you help me learn what I need to say? I will do the work. I will take the classes. But I need a coach who knows how to stand inside silence and not run." She hovered over send. Then she added one more line. "I won't ask you to fix me. Just to practice with me until the message is honest." Send. Morning found the apartment bright and ordinary. Emily stood on a chair flipping pancakes with the seriousness of an air traffic controller. "Today's shape circles," she announced. "We're not advanced yet." Sophia sat at the table, hair in a loose braid, hands around a warm mug. The quiet felt like the soft part of a song. Daniel put a plate in front of her. "House syrup," he said. "Real maple." The board approved the budget. She laughed without sound. "Thank you." His phone buzzed. He checked it, looked at Sophia, then at the floor, then met her eyes. "Your mom emailed me." "Last night." Sophia's shoulders tensed. "She asked for help," he said. "Not permission. Help." Sophia set the fork down. "Help to do what?" "To say the right thing the right way," he said, with her hands. Sophia stared at the knot in the wooden table. "I don't trust that she'll stay." Daniel nodded. "That's fair. I don't know if I want to help her apologize. She signed. I want her to understand. Those are different." "They are," he agreed. "An apology is an address. Understanding is the house." Sophia looked up. "Will you help her?" "I'll help her do the work," he said. "I won't help her skip it." She breathed out. "Okay." His phone buzzed again. He turned the screen to show her an email thread, Rebecca's message, a meeting time. A simple line from him: "I can meet in the school cafeteria after hours." No secrets. Boundaries matter. Sophia nodded. That mattered most, no shadows masquerading as solutions. The cafeteria was empty that evening, chairs on floors, a janitor's radio faint in the far hallway. Daniel sat with a notebook, a stack of index cards, and patience. Rebecca arrived without a coat, as if the weather couldn't catch her. She looked smaller than she did in boardrooms. The fluorescent lights weren't built to flatter power. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, voice steady in the way bridges are steady because they're holding something heavy. Daniel gestured to the chair across from him. "Let's make space for the right words." She sat. "Teach me." He nodded. "We'll keep it simple. Simple doesn't mean easy." He lifted his hands and signed slowly, then said the words so she'd connect sound to shape. "I'm sorry." He repeated it, guiding her fingers, gently adjusting her wrists. "It's not a spell. It's a door. You have to walk through after you open it." She tried, fumbled, tried again. It feels like learning how to breathe with new lungs, she said, half choked, half awed. Good, he said. Bodies remember truth. They practiced, I'm sorry, until her hands knew it without her eyes. Then he added, I love you. She froze. What if it makes me cry? She asked. Then cry, he said. Tears are just proof the pipe isn't clogged anymore. She laughed a startled sound. Then she signed, I love you, crooked Ernest, devastating. She wiped her eyes with the heel of her hand and exhaled a shaky breath. Next, he said gently, I am here. Not as a concept, as a location. He showed her the sign, grounded palm anchored. Presence is an address. Give her one. They practiced until the clock over the vending machines forgot its own minutes. Sometimes he spoke. Sometimes he didn't. When she stumbled, he didn't rush to cover it. Clumsy counts, he said, if it's honest. She leaned back, palms open on the table. I have negotiated billion-dollar deals with a steadier pulse. Those were safer, he said. Her eyes went soft with the kind of gratitude that can't find language. Thank you. He shook his head. Don't thank me tonight. Thank me when you show up with these hands tomorrow. She nodded. Then she made a fist and tapped her heart the little-known sign ferment that a teacher had once shown her in a corporate workshop she had ignored. I mean it, she said. He smiled. Now you're speaking. The next night they practiced again, this time in the staff lounge vending machine, humming the city's dusk, leaning against the window. He added phrases I didn't know how. I want to learn you. Will you show me? Each one cost her, and she paid without asking for change. At one point she stopped and put her hands flat on the table. Why are you doing this? Her voice wasn't suspicious. It was astonished. Because someone did it for me, he said. A nurse in a pediatric ward taught me 3 signs so I could tell a boy he wasn't alone. Those 3 signs saved my life more than once. He shrugged. Debt like that doesn't get paid off. It gets passed on. She watched him for a long moment. Your wife, Anna, he said quietly. She believed in practical miracles. Practical miracles, Rebecca repeated, tasting the phrase. I think I'm ready to attempt one. He slid a final index card across the table. On it, in block letters, he'd written a sentence and drawn the signs in simple line sketches. I am not leaving. Rebecca rested her fingertips on the card like scripture. If she doesn't believe me, say it again, he said. Then keep proving it until the sentence stops sounding like a threat to your fear. She nodded. Then she lifted her hands and signed the sentence, not fast, not perfect, but true. When she finished, her shoulders shook. She didn't apologize for the tears. She let them be witnesses. Daniel slid the box of tissues across the table. Welcome to Tuesday night, he said softly. You're doing the bravest work there is. She sniffed, laughed, and shook her head. If I had known bravery looked like this, I would have found the door sooner. He met her eyes. You found it now. Back at the apartment, Sophia lay on the couch under the quilt of Son's phone in hand. A video pinged in from an unknown number. She tapped it open and watched eyes widening, breath catching as her mother's hands filled the screen. No music, no captions, just Rebecca Kane in a fluorescent-lit room, hair pulled back, eyes red, signing, I'm sorry, I love you, I am here, I didn't know how, I want to learn you, will you show me I am not leaving? The video ended. Another arrived. This one, with mistakes, Rebecca laughing through tears when her fingers tangled, then trying again. Not polished, not PR. Practice. Sophia pressed the phone to her chest and stared at the ceiling until the suns on her pajamas blurred. Emily patted out hair a halo of sleep. Can't sleep. Sophia shook her head. Maybe soon. Emily curled into the crook of her arm. We keep the light on, she whispered as if repeating a spell that had already worked twice. Sophia nodded. Okay. She whispered aloud, just to hear it. Okay. On the other side of the city, Rebecca closed her laptop and sat very still. Her hands ached in the good way, like a door that had rusted at the hinge and opened anyway. In the quiet that followed, Daniel washed 2 mugs in a sink meant for teachers and looked out at the parking lot where so many truths had broken loose. He thought of what comes after breaking not rubble, but rooms. Tomorrow, the bridge. Tonight, the work that makes crossing possible. By late afternoon, the apartment smelled like garlic and tomatoes the way safety sometimes does. Daniel stirred a pot of simmering sauce while Emily tore lettuce into a bowl with the focus of a surgeon. Sophia sat at the small table hair in a loose braid phone face down beside her. She had watched the videos more than once, the ones where her mother's hands stumbled, and then didn't. Daniel glanced at the clock. 6 o'clock, okay? Sophia nodded. Only if she texted first, she had told him. Only if I get to say yes. An hour earlier the text had arrived. May I come by at 6? Only if you want me to. No agenda, no press, just my hands. Sophia read it twice, then signed to Daniel. Yes, with you and Emily there, now at 3 minutes to 6 a knock. Daniel wiped his hands on a dish towel and looked through the peephole. He opened the door. Rebecca stood in the hallway with no armor on, no assistant, no driver, no script. Just a small paper bag in her hands, folded neatly at the top. Thank you for having me, she said to Daniel. Welcome, he answered. House rule, we leave titles with the shoes. A flicker of a smile. She slipped off her heels and stepped inside in stocking feet, suddenly human height. She saw Sophia and stopped like a person who had reached a border she hoped to cross. The paper bag rustled in her grip. Emily bounced forward. We have salad and spaghetti and a lemon that pretends to be dessert. She held up a gold star sticker. For luck. Rebecca's throat tightened. I could use that. Emily solemnly pressed the star onto the folded paper bag. Rebecca turned to Sophia, lifted her hands, and let everything she had practiced become truth. I'm sorry. The sign was simple and steady. I love you. Her fingers shook but did not hide. I am here. Palm-anchored voice absent, meaning loud. I didn't know how. I want to learn you. Will you show me I am not leaving? Sophia didn't try to be brave. The tears rose fast and clean. She crossed the small room in 3 steps and fell into her mother's arms with the force of a child who had carried too much. The hug was quiet, but not small. It said, what language couldn't I needed this shape around me. Rebecca held her like a miracle was something you didn't shout about. I am here, she whispered again, then loosened her hold just enough to see Sophia's face. I won't ask you to forgive me tonight. I'll ask you to let me stay while I earn it. Sophia signed against Rebecca's shoulder hands, clumsy with crying. It hurt. I know, Rebecca said. I'm not going to argue with the truth. I missed you. Sophia added a confession and a wound in the same motion. Rebecca kissed her hair. I missed you the whole time I was pretending I didn't, she said, and the sentence lodged in the room like a nail that held the next board steady. Daniel turned the burner down and pretended to be very interested in spaghetti. Emily, who had invented a dozen ways to respect a moment, tugged him toward the sink and whispered, We should stir quieter. He smiled. Best idea I've heard all week. When the first wave of tears passed, Rebecca opened the paper bag. I brought something. She set a small jar on the table. Real maple syrup. A down payment on Sundays. Sophia laughed without sound, wiping her cheeks. Board approved, she signed borrowing Daniel's joke. The room warmed a degree. They sat to eat, elbows bumping plates crowded. The sauce was simple perfect. The salad was more lettuce than plan. The garlic bread was a little too brown. It tasted like a family learning the recipe. No one tried to make a speech. They passed the bread, and without fanfare passed the truth, too. Emily pointed at Rebecca's hands. Can I see pancakes? Rebecca smiled, nervous and game. She signed it, messy, confident. Emily applauded like a small orchestra. Sophia signed beautiful to her mother a word that had once broken them and now began to build. Halfway through dinner, Sophia set down her fork and lifted her hands. I need to say things aloud. Not out loud. Out of hiding. She looked at Rebecca. The night of the accident, you lost him. I lost you. I want the you who sat on that stool in Studio B and asked the color of the door. I want that mother. You have her, Rebecca said, then owning the cost, and you have the one who failed you, because that's part of the whole truth, too. I won't pretend her away. Sophia nodded, tears calm now, like rain that knew the roof. Daniel cleared his throat. House tradition, he said gently. At this table, one person says a true thing that scared them this week, then someone else says a true thing that helped. Emily went first. Scary thing, the math test. Help thing Dad said, scores are numbers, not names. Sophia signed scary, telling the parking lot, truth. Help you sending the videos. She looked at Rebecca as she signed you. Rebecca blinked hard. Scary, you leaving. Help you letting me knock. They ate until the silence felt full and friendly. When the plates were empty, Rebecca stood to carry dishes. Daniel reached at the same time. Their hands brushed, not dramatic, just a shared instinct to lift. She opened her palm in a small, after you, and he answered without words by handing her the lighter stack. The choreography of people who have done hard things separately and are learning the steps together. At the sink, their voices dropped to the pitch of truth-telling even a thin wall would bless. Thank you, Rebecca said, rinsing a plate. For the cafeteria. For the cards. For not performing heroics. Heroes are busy, Daniel said. I'm a man with a mop and a daughter who believes in doorways. He glanced over his shoulder at Sophia and Emily now drawing little suns on the corner of a paper napkin, and a table that knows how to seat one more. Rebecca swallowed. I don't know what this is. With you. I only know that when I'm near you, I remember to be human first. Daniel dried a plate, choosing care over speed. Good places are like that, he said. She looked at him, something soft and unafraid settling behind her eyes. I'm not ready to name it. I am ready to earn it. Naming's easy, he said. Earning's the work. He half smiled. Work I'm not afraid of. They returned to the table. Emily had drawn a bridge between two stick-figure houses labeling one U.S. and the other U.S. 2. She tapped the bridge with her marker. Strong, she declared. Because both sides are trying. Sophia signed perfect. Rebecca signed agree. The three of them laughed at the grammar and loved the meaning more. After dishes, they lingered. Rebecca pulled a small booklet from her purse, the schedule for ASL classes corners bent from use. Tuesdays at 7, she said to Sophia, Would you come with me or meet me after? For ice cream and corrections. Sophia considered and then signed both. She added with a warning and a promise I will correct a lot. I'll deserve it, Rebecca said, smiling for real. Daniel checked the time. It's late. Sophia looked between her mother and the couch. The decision went through her body like a weather system. Then she signed slow and sure, I want to go home tonight. With you, and come back Sunday for pancakes. Rebecca nodded, relief not triumph written in the set of her shoulders. We'll leave when you're ready. She touched Sophia's wrist lightly. Thank you for trusting me this far. Sophia kissed Emily's forehead and signed, See, you and pancakes, which in this apartment meant, We're not done. At the door, Rebecca turned to Daniel. I don't know how to repay you. You don't, he said. You just keep your promise. She held his gaze, the air between them steady as the space between planks on a bridge. Then see you Sunday, she said. Bring syrup, he replied, a small grin. Already did. They smiled like people who understood the rare luxury of an inside joke built on healing. Rebecca and Sophia stepped into the hallway. The elevator pinged. Before the doors closed, Sophia signed one last word to Daniel and Emily family, then pointed to all four of them. Emily blew a kiss. Daniel lifted a hand. Drive safe. He said the oldest blessing hidden in plain sight. The doors slid shut. The apartment exhaled. Daniel turned off the kitchen light. The gold star on the paper bag glowed faintly in the dark, a quiet badge on the knight's uniform. Emily yawned. "Do bridges make noise?" she asked. "Sometimes," Daniel said, lifting her into his arms. "But the good ones hum. It's the sound of weight being carried." Across the city, in a car that had known grief too well, Sophia leaned her head on Rebecca's shoulder. The road home was familiar. The company was new. At a red light, Rebecca lifted one hand off the wheel and signed with the other, clumsy and true, "Thank you for letting me try." Sophia signed back. "Keep trying, then." After a beat, "Mom." The light changed. The car moved. Somewhere behind them, in a small apartment where doors had been drawn and then discovered in real life, a bridge hummed softly and held. The auditorium was filled with the restless buzz of families' cameras and the rustle of programs. It was graduation day at Westridge Academy, and sunlight streamed through tall windows, catching on banners that swayed gently with the air conditioning. Pride and anticipation mixed in the room like perfume and ink. Rebecca sat in the front row, her posture straight, but her eyes softer than anyone in that school had ever seen her. Beside her sat Daniel, his hand resting on Emily's shoulder as she swung her feet just above the floor. They looked like they belonged not as guests or outsiders, but as family. The dean spoke first, followed by applause and a litany of names. Then the spotlight shifted. "Our valedictorian this year," the announcer declared, "has shown us not only academic excellence, but a voice that transcends sound. Ladies and gentlemen, Sophia Kane." Sophia walked across the stage in her cap and gown, her braid visible under the mortarboard, her hands trembling only slightly. She didn't carry a microphone. She didn't need one. An interpreter stood to the side, ready to give voice to her words for the hearing audience. She paused at the podium, looked out over the crowd, and found the faces she needed most, her mother, Daniel, Emily, all watching with eyes that did not turn away. Then she lifted her hands. In a world that often values only what can be heard, she signed slowly, her motions strong, "I have learned that silence is not absence. It is a space waiting to be filled with meaning." The interpreter's voice carried her words, but it was Sophia's presence that silenced the room. "My journey has been marked by loss. Yes, but also by art, by resilience, and by love that refused to give up even when it was clumsy and late. The most important conversations of my life did not happen with sound. They happened in brushstrokes and gestures and the courage to stay." Rebecca's chest tightened as Sophia's eyes lingered on her. "My mother." Sophia continued, "taught me in her own time that love can learn new languages. My father, whom I lost too soon, taught me that music is more than sound. And my family here," her gaze flicked toward Daniel, "and Emily taught me that sometimes the people who see you clearest are the ones you least expect. To them, and to all of you, I say this. In silence, I found my voice, and in love, I found my home." The crowd erupted into applause, but Rebecca saw only the tears on her daughter's face and the pride shining through them. When the ceremony ended, families poured into the courtyard for photos. Laughter bounced off the brick walls and graduates clutched bouquets and balloons. In the middle of it all, Sophia ran into her mother's arms. They held each other like a promise kept. Daniel and Emily joined, and someone, maybe a teacher, maybe a stranger, offered to take their picture. 4 figures stood close: the powerful CEO, the janitor, his daughter, and the girl who had carried silence like a burden until it became her gift. The photo captured no titles, no wealth, no labels, just family. Afterward, Rebecca gathered them near a small fountain. "There's something I need to show you," she said. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folder. Inside was a glossy brochure with a name in bold letters, the Echoes Foundation for Deaf Education and the Arts. Sophia's eyes widened. "It's official," Rebecca explained. "We've established a foundation in your mother's name. Sophia. It will fund art therapy programs, scholarships for deaf students, and support for families learning ASL together. And one more thing, she paused, her voice catching. Every staff member will be required to learn sign language. No exceptions. Daniel exhaled softly, impressed. Emily clapped her hands. That's the best rule, she said. Sophia signed slowly, carefully, so her mother would feel every word. You didn't just donate money. You gave time. That's what matters. Rebecca's eyes filled. She signed back. Time is the only thing I can't buy, so I'll spend it on you. Daniel stepped closer, his voice low but steady. Rebecca, that foundation, it's not just a gift to Sophia. It's a gift to all of us who've been waiting to be heard. Rebecca turned to him. For a moment in the middle of that noisy courtyard, the world narrowed to the two of them. Then help me run it, she said softly. Be part of it. Daniel hesitated. You'd want a janitor on the board. She shook her head, smiling faintly. I want you. The man who saw my daughter when no one else did. Titles don't build bridges, Daniel. People do. He met her eyes. Then I'll stand on that bridge with you, Emily piped up. Does that mean more pancakes on Sundays? Sophia laughed. Rebecca did too, surprising herself. Yes, Emily, she said. It means more pancakes. As the afternoon sun dipped lower, they walked together, four people who had been broken in different ways, now pieced into something whole. Sophia paused, looking back at the courtyard full of graduates and families. Then she turned to her own family and signed one last truth. Silence is not the end. It's the beginning of listening. Rebecca echoed the sign, clumsy but honest. Daniel placed an arm around both girls, and Emily added, and beginnings are the best part of stories. The four of them stood together, a new chapter already writing itself in their footsteps. And though the world around them was loud, what carried loudest of all was not sound, but love, steady, stubborn, fluent at last. And that is the end of today's story. But the echoes don't stop here. I'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments so we can see just how far this family of listeners reaches. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join us for more powerful emotional stories of love, healing, and second chances. And, most of all, thank you for giving your time, your ears, and your heart. Your presence here is what makes every story worth telling. Until next time, keep believing in the quiet miracles all around you.